Hello and welcome. Tonight, we're going to meet the most important creature on Earth. Not the largest, not the strongest, not the smartest, but the most important. Without this creature, human civilization would collapse within 4 years. Our supermarkets would empty. Our farms would fail. Our world would starve. We're talking about bees. Get comfortable. Let your body relax, because what I'm about to tell you will change how you see these tiny creatures forever. Here's something that will stun you. 1 out of every 3 bites of food you eat exists because of bees. 1 out of 3. That apple you had today, bees made it possible. That cup of coffee, bees. Those almonds, entirely dependent on bees. Avocados, blueberries, cherries, cucumbers. All of them require bee pollination. Without bees, these foods would disappear, not become expensive, not become rare, disappear completely. There's a quote often attributed to Einstein. If the bee disappeared from the surface of the earth, man would have no more than 4 years to live. Einstein probably never said this, but the sentiment is true. Bees are the invisible foundation of our food system, and most people never think about them until now. Let me tell you about what a bee actually is. A honeybee is an insect. 6 legs, 4 wings, 5 eyes. Yes, 5 eyes. 2 large compound eyes on the sides of their head, each made of thousands of tiny lenses, and 3 small, simple eyes on top, called ocelli. These top eyes detect light intensity, helping the bee navigate. A bee's brain is the size of a sesame seed, tiny, about 1 million neurons. Compare that to your brain, 86 billion neurons. A bee has 1 million, and yet that tiny brain can do remarkable things. Bees can count up to 4 at least. They can recognize human faces. They can learn by watching other bees. They can communicate precise locations through dance. They can navigate using the sun, landmarks, and Earth's magnetic field. They can solve problems that stump some mammals, all with a brain smaller than a grain of rice. Let me tell you about the hive. A honeybee hive is a superorganism. That means the whole colony functions like a single creature. Individual bees are like cells in a body, each with a specific role, each essential to the whole. A healthy hive contains 50 to 60,000 bees. In summer, 50,000 individuals working together, without a manager, without meetings, without arguments, just perfect cooperation. There are 3 types of bees in a hive: the queen, the workers, the drones. The queen is the mother of the entire colony. There's only one. She's the largest bee in the hive, and her only job is to lay eggs. A healthy queen can lay 2,000 eggs per day. 2,000 every single day. That's more than her own body weight in eggs. Daily, she can live for 3 to 5 years, much longer than other bees. In her lifetime, she might lay over 1 million eggs. Every bee in the hive is her child. The workers are all female, every single one. They do everything in the hive except lay eggs. They build the honeycomb, they clean the cells, they feed the larvae, they guard the entrance, they forage for nectar and pollen, they make honey, they regulate the temperature, they remove the dead, everything. A worker bee lives about 6 weeks in summer. 6 weeks. She literally works herself to death. Her wings become too frayed to fly, and then she's gone. In winter, workers can live several months because they're not working as hard, just clustering together for warmth, waiting for spring. The drones are male. They have only one purpose: to mate with a queen. That's it. Drones don't have stingers. They can't collect pollen. They don't make honey. They don't even feed themselves. Worker bees have to feed them. And here's the dark part. After a drone mates with a queen, he dies immediately. His reproductive organs are ripped from his body. Death is the price of mating. And drones who don't mate. In autumn, when food becomes scarce, the workers drag them out of the hive and leave them to die in the cold. The hive is ruthlessly efficient. There is no room for those who don't contribute. Let me tell you about honey, because honey is miraculous. To make 1 pound of honey, bees must visit 2 million flowers, 2 million, and fly 55,000 miles. That's twice around the earth for 1 pound of honey. A single bee will produce only 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey in her entire lifetime. 1/12 of a teaspoon. That's how precious honey is. That's how much work goes into every drop. And here's the incredible part. Honey never spoils. Never. Archaeologists have found honey in Egyptian tombs, 3,000 years old, still perfectly edible. Honey has natural antibacterial properties. Its low moisture content prevents bacteria from growing. Its acidity kills microbes. It produces small amounts of hydrogen peroxide. See, ancient Egyptians used honey to treat wounds, and modern medicine is rediscovering this. Honey can help heal burns, reduce infection, speed recovery. The bees figured this out millions of years before we did. Let me tell you how bees make honey. A forager bee visits a flower. She drinks the nectar with her long tongue, called a proboscis. The nectar goes into her honey stomach, a separate stomach just for carrying nectar, not for digesting it. She can visit up to 100 flowers in one trip, filling her honey stomach until it weighs almost as much as she does. Then she flies back to the hive. At the hive, she passes the nectar to a house bee, mouth to mouth. The house bee chews the nectar for about 30 minutes. Enzymes in her mouth break down the complex sugars, transform them into simpler sugars. Then she deposits the nectar into a honeycomb cell. But it's not honey yet. It's still too watery, about 70% water. Honey needs to be less than 20%. So the bees fan it. thousands of bees beating their wings, creating airflow, evaporating the water. This can take days. When the honey is ready, the bees cap the cell with wax, sealing it, preserving it for winter, for the next generation. Forever. Let me tell you about beeswax. Worker bees have special glands on their abdomen that produce tiny flakes of wax. It takes about 8 pounds of honey to produce 1 pound of wax. The bees chew the wax, mix it with enzymes, soften it, then mold it into perfect hexagonal cells. Why hexagons? Because hexagons are the most efficient shape. They use the least amount of wax to create the most storage space. No gaps, no wasted material. Perfect engineering. Mathematicians have proven this. The honeycomb conjecture. Hexagons are optimal. Bees knew this millions of years before humans figured it out. Alright, the cells are tilted slightly upward, about 13 degrees, so the honey doesn't flow out. Every detail is precise, every angle calculated, by creatures with brains the size of seeds. Let me tell you about how bees communicate. This is one of the most remarkable discoveries in biology. Bees dance. When a forager finds a good source of flowers, she returns to the hive and dances. This is called the waggle dance. The dance tells other bees exactly where to find the flowers, not vaguely, exactly. The direction of the dance indicates direction relative to the sun. If she waggles straight up on the vertical comb, the flowers are toward the sun. If she waggles at an angle, the flowers are at that angle from the sun. The duration of the waggle indicates distance. Longer waggle means farther away. 1 second of waggling equals about 1 kilometer. The intensity of the dance indicates quality. Better flowers mean more enthusiastic dancing. Other bees watch, learn, and fly directly to the flowers without ever having been there before. This dance language was decoded by Carl von Frisch. In the 1940s, he won the Nobel Prize for it. A language of dance, more precise than most human directions, performed by insects. Let me tell you about bee navigation. Bees can fly up to 5 miles from their hive to find flowers and return home perfectly every time. How do they do this? They use the sun as a compass. But the sun moves across the sky, so bees have an internal clock. They compensate for the sun's movement automatically. On cloudy days, they can detect polarized light patterns in the sky, invisible to us, but clear as a map to bees. They also use landmarks, memorizing the landscape, trees, buildings, rivers, creating mental maps, and they can detect Earth's magnetic field, tiny crystals of magnetite in their abdomen, acting like a built-in compass. Multiple backup systems for a creature that weighs less than a paperclip. Let me pause here. Take a breath. You've already learned so much about the hive and its inhabitants, about honey and how it's made. about dance language and navigation. And we're just beginning. The night is long, and the bees have more secrets to share. Let me tell you about what bees see. Bees see the world very differently than we do. They can see ultraviolet light, a whole spectrum invisible to humans. To a bee, flowers look completely different. Patterns appear that we cannot see. Landing strips pointing to the nectar, bullseyes guiding the bee to the center. Flowers have evolved these UV patterns specifically for bees, a secret communication between plant and pollinator hidden from human eyes. But bees can't see red. Red looks black to them. That's why bee-pollinated flowers are rarely red. They're purple, blue, yellow, white, colors bees can see. Bees also see much faster than we do. Their vision processes images 5 times faster. What looks like smooth motion to us looks like a slideshow to them. This helps them fly at high speeds, avoiding obstacles and landing precisely on flowers. Let me tell you about the bee's sense of smell. Bees have an incredible sense of smell. Their antennae contain thousands of odor receptors. They can detect a flower from over a mile away. They can smell the difference between a flower with nectar and one that's already been drained. They can recognize their own hive by smell. Each colony has a unique scent. Guard bees at the entrance smell every incoming bee. If the smell is wrong, the intruder is attacked. Bees can even be trained to detect explosives, landmines, cancer in human breath. Their sense of smell is that precise. Let me tell you about how bees fly. For years, scientists said bees shouldn't be able to fly. Their wings were too small, their bodies too heavy. The math didn't work. Of course, bees could fly. The scientists were just wrong about the math. Bees don't fly like airplanes. They don't generate lift the same way. A bee's wings beat over 200 times per second. 200 per second. That's what creates the buzzing sound, the frequency of the wing beats. Their wings don't just flap up and down. They rotate, creating vortices of air, generating lift in a way planes cannot. Bees can fly forward, backward, sideways, hover in place, or more maneuverable than any helicopter. They can fly up to 15 miles per hour and carry loads nearly as heavy as themselves. Imagine carrying your own body weight while flying. That's what a forager bee does every day. Let me tell you about the temperature inside a hive. Bees are cold-blooded, but a beehive is warm, exactly 95 degrees Fahrenheit. The brood nest where babies develop must stay at this precise temperature. If it's too hot, bees collect water, spread it on the comb, and fan their wings to evaporate it. Air conditioning. If it's too cold, bees cluster together, vibrate their wing muscles without flying, generating heat, central heating. In winter, the cluster can maintain 90 degrees when the outside temperature is below 0. The bees on the outside rotate inward, sharing the warmth. No bee freezes, no bee overheats. They've been doing this for millions of years, long before humans invented thermostats. Let me tell you about how bees decide things. Bees are democratic. When a hive needs to find a new home, scout bees go out searching. They find potential sites, hollow trees, cavities in rocks. Then they return and dance. The same waggle dance, and telling other bees about the location. But here's the remarkable part. Different scouts find different sites. Each dances for her preferred location. Other bees watch, fly out to investigate, form their own opinions, and then they dance. Over time, more and more bees dance for the best site. The less popular sites get fewer dancers, until eventually a consensus emerges. The whole swarm agrees, and they move to the new home together. This is swarm intelligence. No single bee makes a decision. The decision emerges from thousands of individual votes, and it's usually right. Bees almost always choose the best available site. Democracy works, at least for bees. Let me tell you about the birth of a bee. The queen lays an egg in a cell, tiny, like a grain of rice. After 3 days, the egg hatches into a larva, a tiny white grub, blind, legless, helpless. Nurse bees feed the larva constantly, up to 1,000 visits per day. Royal jelly at first, then bee bread, a mixture of pollen and honey. The larva grows rapidly, molting 5 times. After 6 days, the cell is capped with wax, and the larva spins a cocoon. Inside the sealed cell, the larva transforms, pupates, growing legs and wings and eyes, becoming a bee. After 12 days in the sealed cell, a fully formed bee chews through the wax cap and emerges into the hive. 21 days from egg to adult bee, 3 weeks, a complete transformation. The new bee is fuzzy and soft. Her exoskeleton hasn't hardened yet. She's pale and uncertain, but within hours, she starts working, cleaning cells, then feeding larvae, then building comb, then guarding, then finally foraging. Each job at the right time, without instruction, just knowing. Let me tell you about royal jelly. Royal jelly is a substance produced by worker bees from glands in their heads. All larvae receive royal jelly for the first 3 days. Then most switch to bee bread. But some larvae continue receiving only royal jelly, and they become queens. That's it. The only difference between a worker and a queen is diet. Same genetics, same egg, different food, different destiny. Royal jelly turns on different genes, transforms the larva's development, creates a larger bee with functional ovaries and a much longer lifespan. Food literally creates royalty. Humans have been fascinated by royal jelly for centuries, hoping it might extend our lives too. The evidence is mixed. But the idea is powerful. You are what you eat. Let me tell you about the queen's mating flight. A virgin queen leaves the hive only once for mating, high in the air, in special areas called drone congregation zones, where drones from many hives gather, waiting. The queen mates with 10 to 20 drones in mid-flight, storing their sperm in a special organ, enough sperm to fertilize eggs for her entire life. She will never mate again. One flight, then years of laying eggs. The drones she mated with are dead, their sacrifice complete. The queen returns to the hive and becomes an egg-laying machine for the rest of her life. Let me tell you about bee stings. Only female bees can sting because the stinger is a modified egg-laying organ. Drones have no stinger. A honeybee's stinger is barbed. When she stings a mammal, the barbs catch in the flesh. The stinger tears from her body, along with part of her abdomen. She dies within minutes. The sting is a suicide mission, the ultimate sacrifice for the hive. But the detached stinger keeps pumping venom for several minutes, delivering the full dose, even after the bee is dead. This is why you should scrape a stinger out quickly. Don't pinch it. That squeezes more venom in. Scrape it sideways. Queen bees have smooth stingers. They can sting repeatedly without dying, but they rarely sting humans. They save their stingers for rival queens. Let me tell you about bee venom. Bee venom is a complex cocktail. Over 50 different compounds. Melitine is the main component. It causes pain and inflammation. But bee venom also contains compounds being studied for medicine. Apamine affects the nervous system, being researched for neurological conditions. Adolapine has anti-inflammatory properties, potentially useful for arthritis. Some people practice bee venom therapy, deliberately getting stung to treat various conditions. The evidence is limited, but the practice is ancient. What evolved as a weapon might also be a medicine. Let me pause here again. Rest your mind. Let the information settle like pollen in a cell. We've traveled deep into the hive, met the queen and her workers, watched honey being made, learned the dance of the bees. There's so much more to discover, but there's no rush. The bees are patient, and so are we. Let me tell you about the history of bees and humans. Humans have been collecting honey for at least 15,000 years. Cave paintings in Spain show honey hunters climbing ropes to reach wild hives, smoke in one hand, basket in the other. The same technique used today. 15,000 years later, ancient Egyptians kept bees in clay hives. 4,000 years ago, they used honey as sweetener, medicine, payment, even for embalming mummies. The bee was a symbol of royalty in Egypt. The pharaoh was called Bee King. Greeks and Romans prized honey. Mead was a popular drink, honey wine. Some believe It was humanity's first alcoholic beverage. In medieval Europe, beekeeping was serious business. Monasteries kept bees for wax, candles for the church, honey for the table. Beeswax was currency. Taxes could be paid in wax. When Europeans came to America, they brought honeybees. There were no honeybees in North America before colonization. Native Americans called them white man's flies. The bees spread faster than the colonists, swarming into the wilderness, establishing wild hives. Now honeybees are everywhere, one of the most successful species on Earth, thanks to their partnership with humans. Let me tell you about different types of bees. There are over 20,000 species of bees in the world. 20,000. We've been talking mostly about honeybees, Apis mellifera, the most famous, the most managed, but not the only important one. Bumblebees are larger and fuzzier. They live in smaller colonies, often underground, maybe 50 to a few hundred bees. Bumblebees can fly in colder weather, and they do something special called buzz pollination. They vibrate their flight muscles while holding a flower, shaking loose pollen that other bees can't access. Tomatoes need this. Without bumblebees, no tomatoes. Carpenter bees are solitary. They don't live in hives. They drill holes in wood, lay their eggs alone. Each female is her own queen. Mason bees use mud to build nests, also solitary, incredibly efficient pollinators. One mason bee can pollinate as much as 100 honeybees. Leafcutter bees cut perfect circles from leaves to line their nests. The holes they leave look machine-made, but it's just bees. Sweat bees are attracted to human sweat. For the salt, they're tiny and often metallic green, beautiful little jewels. Each species has its role, its specialized flowers, its unique contribution. The web of pollination is complex, and honeybees are just one strand. Let me tell you about the enemies of bees. Bees have many threats. Varroa mites are the worst. Tiny parasites that feed on bee blood, spreading viruses, weakening colonies. They came from Asia, where Asian honeybees had evolved resistance, but European honeybees had no defense. Varroa has devastated bee populations worldwide. Beekeepers fight constantly to control them. Pesticides are another threat, especially neonicotinoids. These are systemic. They get into the entire plant, including the pollen and nectar. Even tiny doses affect bees, disrupting navigation, impairing memory, reducing reproduction. Some countries have banned them, others haven't. The debate continues, while bees continue dying. Habitat loss matters too. Fewer wildflowers, more monocultures, less diverse food for bees. Climate change shifts flowering times. Sometimes bees emerge when their flowers haven't bloomed yet, or the flowers bloom when there are no bees. The timing breaks down, and then There's colony collapse disorder. Starting around 2006, beekeepers opened hives to find them empty. Adult bees simply gone. No bodies, just vanished. No one knows exactly why. Probably a combination of factors: mites, pesticides, disease, stress, a perfect storm against bees. Bee populations have declined dramatically, in some areas by 50% or more. This should terrify us more than almost any other environmental crisis, because without bees, our food system collapses. Let me tell you about what you can do. Plant flowers, native flowers if possible, things that bloom at different times, so there's always food for bees. Avoid pesticides, or at least don't spray when flowers are blooming. When bees are foraging, leave some wild spaces, bare ground for nesting, dead wood for carpenter bees, messy corners where nature can do its thing. Buy local honey, support beekeepers. They're the ones maintaining healthy colonies, fighting the mites, keeping bees alive. Every flower you plant matters. Every pesticide you don't spray matters. Every choice adds up. Bees need us now, because we've made the world harder for them. The least we can do is make it a little easier. Let me tell you about bees and flowers, the love story that feeds the world. Flowers didn't always exist. For most of Earth's history, plants reproduced with spores, like ferns still do. Then, about 130 million years ago, flowering plants appeared and changed everything. Flowers are reproductive advertisements, bright colors to attract pollinators. See sweet nectar as payment, pollen as the currency of reproduction. Bees and flowers evolved together, each shaping the other. Flowers developed colors bees can see, UV patterns to guide bees to nectar, shapes that fit bee bodies. Bees developed long tongues for deep flowers, hairy bodies to carry pollen, preferences for certain colors and shapes. They need each other. The bee needs the flower's food. The flower needs the bee's service. This is called coevolution. Two species dancing together through time, each step influencing the other. The result is the colorful world we live in. Flowers everywhere, bees everywhere, beauty everywhere. Let me tell you about propolis. Propolis is bee glue, made from tree resin mixed with wax and enzymes. Bees use it to seal cracks in the hive, fill gaps, strengthen the structure. But propolis is more than glue. It's medicine. Propolis is antimicrobial, antiviral, antifungal. Bees coat the inside of the hive with it, creating a sterile environment. 50,000 bees living in close quarters should be a disease disaster, but propolis keeps them healthy. When a mouse enters a hive and is stung to death, the bees can't remove the body. Too heavy. So they mummify it, coat it completely in propolis, sealing in the decay, preventing disease. Humans have used propolis for thousands of years as medicine. The ancient Egyptians used it for embalming. Greeks used it for wounds. Modern research suggests it might help with cold sores, minor burns, dental issues. The bee's pharmacy, available to us. Let me tell you about the sounds of the hive. A hive is never silent. The collective buzz of thousands of wings, a constant hum. But listen closer, and you hear different sounds. The queen pipes, a high-pitched sound, made by vibrating her wing muscles against the comb. A virgin queen pipes to announce her presence, to challenge other virgin queens. Only one queen can rule. The others must die. Worker bees pipe too, to signal that it's time to swarm. There's a roar when the hive is disturbed. The buzz rises in pitch, becomes angry, a warning. Experienced beekeepers can tell the hive's mood by sound: happy, hungry, queenless, ready to swarm. The hive speaks to those who listen. Let me tell you about the intelligence of bees. We keep discovering new abilities, things we thought only smart animals could do. Bees can count. In experiments, bees learn to fly to the third landmark to find food. Not the second, not the fourth, the third. They can count at least to 4, maybe higher. Bees understand the concept of 0. They know that 0 is less than 1, a concept many animals can't grasp. Some human children struggle with it. Bees can learn by watching. If one bee sees another solve a puzzle, she can do it too, without trial and error. Social learning. Bees can be trained to play soccer, rolling a ball to a goal for a reward, but not natural behavior, learned behavior. Bees might experience something like emotions. See, pessimistic bees and optimistic bees, responding differently to ambiguous situations. When shaken roughly, bees become pessimistic, more likely to expect bad outcomes, like stressed humans. Do bees feel? We don't know. But they're not simple machines. There's something going on in those tiny brains. Let me tell you about bees in winter. When temperatures drop, bees don't hibernate. They cluster. The whole colony forms a tight ball. The queen at the center, workers surrounding her. The bees on the outside are coldest. They vibrate their wing muscles to generate heat. When they get too cold, they rotate inward. Others take their place. The cluster maintains 90 degrees at the center, even in sub-zero temperatures outside. They eat honey for fuel. All that summer work pays off now. A strong hive needs 60 pounds of honey to survive winter. That's why beekeepers leave enough, or feed sugar syrup if stores are low. The queen stops laying eggs, or slows dramatically. The colony shrinks, waiting for spring. When the first warm day comes, bees take cleansing flights. They haven't defecated all winter. Honeybees keep a clean hive, so they hold it for months. That first warm day, they fly out and relieve themselves. Yellow spots on the snow, signs that the bees survived. Let me tell you about swarming. In spring, when the hive is strong and crowded, something remarkable happens. The workers start raising new queens, special cells, larger, pointing downward, fed only royal jelly. Before the new queens emerge, the old queen leaves, and half the colony goes with her. This is a swarm. Thousands of bees pour out of the hive, a living cloud, swirling in the air. They cluster on a branch, or a fence post, or a mailbox. A beard of bees. See scouts fly out looking for new homes. They return and dance. The democratic process begins. After hours or days, the swarm lifts off and flies to their new home to start again. Swarming is how bees reproduce as a species, not just individuals, but whole colonies. One becomes two, life spreading, continuing. Swarms are actually quite gentle. The bees have no hive to defend. They're focused on finding a new home, not on stinging. If you see a swarm, don't panic. Call a beekeeper. They'll be happy to collect them. Free bees. Let me tell you about the death of a bee. A worker bee lives about 6 weeks in summer. Her life is measured in wing beats, about 500 miles of flight. Then her wings are too worn to fly. When a bee knows she's dying, she often leaves the hive, flies away so she doesn't die inside, so other bees don't have to remove her body. One last act of service. If a bee dies inside the hive, undertaker bees carry her out, drop her far from the entrance, keeping the hive clean. The hive goes on. Individual bees come and go, but the colony continues, year after year, generation after generation. A hive can live for decades. Queens die and are replaced. Every single bee is replaced, but the hive remains. There's something profound in that. The individual serves the whole. The whole outlasts any individual, life continuing through death. Let me tell you about bees around the world. Different cultures have different relationships with bees. In Hindu tradition, Vishnu, Krishna, and Kama are all associated with bees. The bee represents the soul, seeking sweetness. In ancient Greece, priestesses of Demeter were called Melissae, bees. The temple at Delphi was supposedly built by bees. Celts saw bees as messengers to the other world. When someone died, you had to tell the bees, or they would leave or die themselves. This tradition continues in some places, telling the bees, knocking on the hive, and sharing news, deaths, marriages, births. In Mayan culture, a stingless bee called Melipona was sacred, kept for honey used in ceremonies, still kept today. Napoleon chose the bee as his symbol, representing industry, order, the perfect society. Bees appear on coins and coats of arms around the world, symbols of hard work, community, sweetness. Every culture that encountered bees found meaning in them. There's something about bees that speaks to humans across time and place. Let me tell you about the future of bees. It's uncertain. Bee populations are declining. Some species are endangered. The rusty-patched bumblebee was common in North America. Now it's listed as endangered. Climate change is shifting habitats. Pesticides are everywhere. Diseases spread through globalized beekeeping. But there's hope too. People are paying attention. Cities are banning certain pesticides. Wildflower plantings are increasing. Urban beekeeping is growing. Scientists are breeding more resistant bees, developing new treatments for mites, understanding better what bees need. The future isn't written yet. It depends on what we do now. Every garden is a vote, for flowers or against them. Every purchase is a choice, for sustainable agriculture or against it. The bees are asking us a question, not in words, but in their presence or absence. What kind of world do we want? One with bees or one without? Let me share some final thoughts. Bees have been here for over 100 million years. They've survived ice ages, mass extinctions, continental drift. They've seen dinosaurs rise and fall. They've watched mammals take over. They've witnessed humans emerge. And now we threaten them. In just a few decades, with our chemicals, our monocultures, our changing climate. But it's not too late. Bees are resilient. They've survived worse. With a little help, they can survive us too. And maybe, in helping them, we help ourselves. Because a world good for bees is a world good for us. Diverse, blooming, alive. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, maybe you'll dream of bees, golden and fuzzy, buzzing through flowers, dancing in the sun. Or maybe you'll dream of honey, sweet and golden, the taste of summer preserved forever. Or maybe you'll dream of the hive, thousands of lives working together in perfect harmony. Whatever you dream, know that somewhere, right now, bees are working in the darkness, keeping warm, making honey, preparing for tomorrow, just like your body is preparing now for tomorrow. Through the sweet work of sleep, let the hum of the hive become a lullaby, soft and constant, vibrating at the edge of hearing. Let the sweetness of honey fill your thoughts, golden and warm, comforting. Let the dance of the bees show you the way to the flowers of dreams, to the nectar of rest. Sleep now, like a bee in winter, clustered and warm, safe in the hive of your bed. Tomorrow you'll wake, and the world will still need bees, and it will still need you. But for now, rest. Good night. Sweet dreams, as sweet as honey. But wait, before sleep takes you completely, there are more wonders to share. The bees have more secrets. Let me tell you about the electricity of bees. This is one of the newest discoveries. and one of the most remarkable. Bees carry an electric charge, a positive charge, built up as they fly through the air. A friction against air molecules. Flowers have a negative charge connected to the ground. When a bee lands on a flower, the charges interact. Pollen leaps from the flower to the bee, attracted by static electricity. But that's not all. When a bee visits a flower, she changes its electric field. The flower becomes less negative. Other bees can detect this change. They know the flower has been recently visited, and they fly to fresher flowers instead. Bees sense electric fields through tiny hairs on their bodies that bend in response to electrical forces. They're communicating through electricity, a channel we never knew existed until 2013. What else are they sensing that we can't see? Let me tell you about bees and caffeine. Some flowers produce caffeine in their nectar. Not much less than your coffee, but enough to affect bees. Caffeine enhances bee memory. Bees that drink caffeinated nectar remember that flower better, return to it more often. The plant is drugging the bees, creating loyal customers. It's a little manipulative, but it works. Coffee plants and citrus plants both do this. The bees are addicted, and the plants benefit. Nature is full of such bargains. Not always fair, but effective. Let me tell you about the bee's tongue. A bee's tongue is called a proboscis. It's long and hairy. The tongue works like a mop, soaking up nectar. The hairs trap liquid. A bee can extend and retract her tongue over 200 times per second, lapping up nectar at incredible speed. Different bee species have different tongue lengths, which determines which flowers they can access. Long-tongued bees can reach deep into tubular flowers. Short-tongued bees stick to open, shallow flowers. It's one of the ways different bee species avoid competition. Each finds its own niche, in its own set of flowers. Let me tell you about the bees' baskets. Worker bees have special structures on their hind legs called pollen baskets or corbicula. They're curved areas surrounded by stiff hairs, like little bowls. As a bee visits flowers, pollen sticks to her fuzzy body. She combs herself with her legs, gathering the pollen, packing it into her baskets, mixing it with a little nectar to make it stick. A fully loaded bee carries pollen pellets that can be almost as heavy as she is, visible as yellow or orange lumps on her legs. She flies back to the hive, deposits the pollen in cells where other bees pack it down. Oh, mix it with honey and let it ferment slightly. This becomes bee bread, the protein source for the colony, essential for raising young. Let me tell you about the waggle dance in more detail. We mentioned it before, but it deserves more attention. A forager returns from finding flowers. She walks onto the vertical comb and begins to dance. First, she waggles, vibrating her body rapidly while moving forward. Then she circles back, waggles again, circles the other way, making a figure 8 pattern over and over. The angle of the waggle, relative to vertical, indicates direction relative to the sun. Straight up means toward the sun. 30 degrees left means 30 degrees left of the sun. The duration of the waggle indicates distance. 1 second equals about 1 kilometer. The vigor of the dance indicates quality. Better flowers mean more enthusiastic dancing, faster waggling, more repetitions. Other bees crowd around, touching the dancer with their antennae, sensing the vibrations, smelling the flower scent on her body. Then they fly out, following her instructions, finding the flowers miles away with no other guidance. This language was evolved, not taught. It's in their genes. A bee born in a laboratory with no contact with other bees can still perform the dance and understand it. Language without learning, communication written in DNA. Let me tell you about how bees see flowers. We mentioned ultraviolet vision, but let me paint a clearer picture. To your eyes, a sunflower is yellow with a brown center. To a bee, it has an ultraviolet bullseye, dark center with radiating lines, pointing to the nectar. To your eyes, a white evening primrose is plain white. To a bee, it has purple lines leading to the center, a runway guiding her in for landing. These patterns are called nectar guides or honey guides. They evolved to help bees find nectar quickly. The faster a bee finds nectar, the more flowers she visits, the more pollen she spreads. The flowers are advertising in frequencies only bees can see, invisible billboards everywhere. Let me tell you about bee genetics. Bees have an unusual genetic system called haplodiploidy. Females have 2 sets of chromosomes. Like humans, they develop from fertilized eggs. Males have only 1 set. They develop from unfertilized eggs. They have no father. This means sisters are unusually related, more related than mothers and daughters, and sharing 75% of their genes instead of the usual 50%. This might explain why worker bees sacrifice for the hive. Their sisters share most of their genes. By helping sisters reproduce, workers spread their own genes, even without reproducing themselves. It's called kin selection, evolution favoring cooperation among relatives. The math of genetics creating the miracle of the hive. Let me tell you about the queen's pheromones. The queen produces special chemicals called queen mandibular pheromones, QMP. These pheromones do several things. They suppress worker reproduction. Workers have ovaries, but the queen's pheromones keep them inactive. They attract workers to attend the queen, feeding her, grooming her. They signal that the hive has a queen. As long as the pheromones are strong, workers don't raise a new queen. They help the swarm stay together. Workers follow the queen's scent. When a queen dies suddenly, the pheromones fade. Within hours, workers know something is wrong. They become agitated and begin raising new queens from young larvae before it's too late. The queen rules through chemistry, not force, influence rather than power. Let me tell you about when queens fight. There can only be one queen. When multiple virgin queens emerge, they fight to the death. A queen has a smooth stinger. She can sting repeatedly, and she uses it on her rivals. Sometimes, the first queen out finds the other queen cells and stings her rivals through the wax, killing them before they emerge. If two queens meet face to face, they fight, grappling, stinging, until one is dead. The victor becomes the sole queen, the mother of the next generation. It sounds brutal, and it is, but the hive can only support one queen, one egg layer. The fight determines who is strongest and best suited to lead. Let me tell you about bee diseases. Bees face many diseases. American foul brood is the worst, a bacterial infection. It kills larvae, turns them into gooey brown rot with a terrible smell. There is no cure. Infected hives must be burned, equipment destroyed to prevent spread. Nosema is a fungal disease. It affects the gut, causes dysentery, weakens bees. Chalk brood mummifies larvae, turns them into hard white chunks. Deformed wing virus is spread by varroa mites. Bees emerge with shriveled, useless wings, unable to fly, unable to forage. The diseases and parasites keep getting worse, spreading through global trade, moving bees from continent to continent, bringing problems with them. Beekeepers fight constantly, monitoring, treating, preventing. It's never-ending work. Let me tell you about wild bees versus managed bees. Most attention goes to honeybees because they're managed, kept in hives, producing honey. But wild bees are equally important, maybe more important. Many crops are better pollinated by wild bees, bumblebees, mason bees, mining bees. They visit different flowers at different times, in different ways. Diversity matters. A farm with only honeybees is fragile. A farm with many bee species is resilient. But wild bees are declining faster than honeybees. Less attention, less protection. When a honeybee hive dies, beekeepers buy a new one. When wild bees disappear, there's no replacement. We need both, managed and wild. Together, they keep the world pollinated. Let me tell you about bee-friendly farming. Some farmers are changing, planting wildflower strips along fields, reducing pesticide use, leaving habitat for wild bees. It's called pollinator-friendly agriculture, and it works. Farms with wildflower margins have more bees, better pollination, often higher yields. The bees aren't just helped by the flowers, they help the crops nearby. Mutual benefit. Some farmers rent honeybee hives during bloom. Trucks full of hives arrive in the night, set up in the orchards. The bees pollinate the almonds, the apples, the blueberries. Then the trucks move on to the next farm. It's a strange migration. Billions of bees trucked across the country, following the blooms. Stressful for the bees, but necessary for our food system, at least for now. Let me tell you about urban bees. Cities can be surprisingly good for bees. Gardens full of diverse flowers, blooming at different times. Less pesticide use than farms. Warm microclimates. London, Paris, New York all have thriving bee populations. Rooftop hives are increasingly common. Hotels, offices, apartment buildings, all keeping bees. Urban honey often has interesting flavors, reflecting the diversity of city gardens. Of course, cities have challenges too. Limited nesting sites for wild bees, competition from too many honeybee hives, pollution. But overall, cities are becoming bee refuges. As countryside becomes more hostile, let me tell you about bees and medicine. Beyond honey and propolis, bees offer other medical possibilities. Royal jelly is sold as a health supplement. Evidence for benefits is limited, but people have used it for centuries. Bee pollen is another supplement, nutrient-rich, but not a miracle food. Bee venom therapy is more controversial. Deliberate stings or venom extracts used to treat arthritis, multiple sclerosis, other conditions. The evidence is mixed. Some studies show benefits, others show none. Allergic reactions are a real risk. Some people have died from bee venom therapy, but research continues. Compounds in bee venom might treat cancer or neurological diseases. The bee's pharmacy may have more to offer. We're only beginning to explore. Let me tell you about bees in art and culture. Bees have inspired humans for millennia. Ancient cave paintings show honey hunting, 15,000 years old. Greek coins featured bees. The city of Ephesus used the bee as its symbol. Medieval manuscripts are filled with bee imagery, the hive representing the ideal society, orderly, industrious, obedient. The bee was Napoleon's chosen symbol, embroidered on his robes, representing his empire. In literature, bees appear constantly. Shakespeare references them. Virgil wrote a whole book about them. Emily Dickinson wrote poems about them. Sylvia Plath kept bees and wrote about keeping them. The bee movie might be silly, but it brought bees into popular culture, made people think about them, even briefly. Bees carry meaning, industry, sweetness, community, the sting of truth. They're symbols we keep returning to across every culture that knows them. Let me tell you about the oldest bees. The oldest bee fossil is about 100 million years old, trapped in amber, perfectly preserved. It looks remarkably like modern bees, already evolved for flower visiting, already fuzzy, already bee-like. Bees evolved from wasps, predatory ancestors that started visiting flowers for nectar, then for pollen. Over millions of years, they became specialized, pollen covered instead of smooth, vegetarian instead of carnivorous. The partnership with flowers made them successful. As flowers spread, bees spread with them. Now there are over 20,000 species, from tiny sweat bees to large carpenter bees, all descended from one wasp ancestor that discovered the sweetness of flowers. Let me tell you about bees in winter one more time. As nights grow cold, the hive prepares. Drones are expelled, useless mouths to feed. The cluster tightens, queen at the center, workers surrounding. Honey stores are crucial, 60 pounds or more needed. The bees don't sleep, don't hibernate. They wait, alert, eating honey, generating heat. On warm days, they break cluster briefly, move to new honey stores, take cleansing flights if warm enough. On cold days, they cluster tight. The outer bees rotate in. No one freezes for too long. Spring seems far away, but the bees are patient. They've done this for millions of years. And when the first flowers bloom, they'll be ready. First bees out, finding crocuses, willows, the earliest nectar. The cycle continues, winter to spring, death to renewal. Let me tell you about what bees teach us. Cooperation. 50,000 individuals working as one. No ego, no conflict. Just shared purpose. Efficiency, the hexagon. Perfect engineering, no waste. Industry, work until you literally can't work anymore. Then make way for the next generation. Communication, finding ways to share complex information through dance, through scent, through vibration. Adaptability, surviving for 100 million years through every climate change, every extinction event. Connection, the individual serves the whole. The whole protects the individual. Neither can exist without the other. Maybe bees aren't so different from us, or maybe we should be more like them. Let me offer some final reflections. Tonight, you've traveled into the hive, met the queen and her daughters, watched honey being made, learned the dance of the foragers. You've seen how bees communicate, navigate, decide, survive. You've learned why they matter for our food, for our world, for our future. And maybe, just maybe, you'll notice them more now, in your garden, in the park, on the flowers you pass. A bee on a flower is a miracle. 100 million years of evolution, perfect design, performing the work that feeds the world. Next time you see one, pause, watch, appreciate. That tiny creature is keeping you alive, one flower at a time. And now, sleep. Let the hum of the hive be your lullaby, low and constant, the sound of life continuing. Let the warmth of the cluster be your warmth, surrounded by others, safe. Let the sweetness of honey be your dreams, golden, preserved, waiting for you. You are part of the web, connected to the bees, to the flowers, to the food on your table. Everything is connected, and you are part of it all. Good night. Sleep sweetly, and wake ready to be part of the world again. A world that needs bees and needs you. But wait, a few more wonders before the final drift into sleep. Let me tell you about bees and mathematics. Bees are natural mathematicians without knowing mathematics at all. The honeycomb is a masterpiece of geometry. Perfect hexagons, tilted exactly right, using minimum wax for maximum storage. The honeycomb conjecture was proposed in ancient times, that hexagons are the most efficient way to divide space. But it wasn't proven mathematically until 1999. Bees knew the answer millions of years before. Bees also solve the traveling salesman problem. See, given multiple flower locations, they find the shortest route between them, a problem that challenges computers, solved by tiny brains, and they can understand zero, a concept humans didn't develop until relatively recently. The Babylonians only developed zero about 3,000 years ago. Bees have understood it for millions. Let me tell you about bees and alcohol. Bees can get drunk. Nectar sometimes ferments in flowers, or honey ferments in the hive. Bees that drink fermented nectar become intoxicated. They fly erratically, can't land properly, become aggressive or sleepy, just like drunk humans. But here's the amazing part. Guard bees at the hive entrance won't let them in. They can tell a drunk bee from a sober one, and they turn them away. Some researchers have even seen guard bees attack drunk bees, biting off their legs. Harsh punishment for intoxication. The hive has no tolerance for impairment. Every bee must perform or face consequences. Let me tell you about bees and sleep. Yes, bees sleep. For a long time, we didn't know this, but careful observation revealed the truth. Forager bees sleep at night. They become still. Their antennae droop. Their muscles relax. They even have different sleep stages. Light sleep and deep sleep. Younger bees in the hive sleep less. They're always busy. But older foragers need rest. Sleep-deprived bees perform worse at the waggle dance. Their communication becomes sloppy. They give less accurate directions. Even bees need their rest, just like you do right now. Let me tell you about bee memories. Bees have excellent memories. For a creature with 1,000,000 neurons, they can remember good flower locations for days. They can learn to associate colors with rewards and remember the association for weeks. They remember landmarks, the route from hive to flowers, stored in their tiny brains. Old foragers have more experience. They know where flowers bloom each season. They remember from year to year. Except individual bees don't live that long. The colony remembers through teaching. Older bees showing younger bees where to go. Knowledge passed down through generations of 6-week lives. Let me tell you about bees and magnets. Bees can sense Earth's magnetic field. They have tiny crystals of magnetite in their abdomen, natural compasses. This helps with navigation, especially on cloudy days. When the sun isn't visible, bees can also use magnetic fields to align their comb. In new hives, the comb often aligns with magnetic north. We don't fully understand why or how exactly they sense the field, but they do. Another hidden sense, another layer of complexity. Let me tell you about bees and vibrations. Bees communicate through vibration, not just a waggle dance. They make sounds by vibrating their wing muscles without flapping their wings. The piping of queens, high-pitched signals announcing their presence. The tooting and quacking of virgin queens, communicating before they even emerge. The stop signal, a brief vibration that tells another bee to stop dancing. 'Cause used when a food source is depleted or dangerous. Bees sense these vibrations through their legs, feeling the comb shake, picking up the messages. A whole communication system, beyond our hearing, beyond our understanding for centuries. Let me tell you about how bees recognize each other. Every bee has a chemical signature. Hydrocarbons on her exoskeleton. Each hive has a unique blend, a colony odor. Guard bees smell every bee entering the hive. If the smell matches the colony, welcome. If not, attack. Bees can also recognize individual humans by face. They can be trained to associate certain faces with rewards, and they remember a brain of 1 million neurons, recognizing human faces. It seems impossible, but they do it. Let me tell you about the economics of the hive. The hive operates on energy economics. Every flight costs energy. Every gram of honey took energy to make. Foragers calculate unconsciously. Is this flower worth the trip? Is the nectar reward worth the energy spent? They adjust their behavior accordingly, visiting rich flowers more often, abandoning poor ones. The colony as a whole allocates resources. More foragers to good locations, fewer to poor ones. No central planner, just individual decisions adding up to collective efficiency. It's emergent economics, markets without money, optimization without calculation. Let me tell you about queen cups and queen cells. When the hive decides to raise a new queen, they build special cells. First, queen cups, small acorn-shaped beginnings, pointing downward, unlike normal cells, which point sideways. The queen lays an egg in the cup, or workers move a young larva there. The workers feed this larva only royal jelly, as much as she can eat. The cell grows longer, becomes a queen cell, hanging like a peanut from the comb. Inside, the larva transforms, growing larger than a worker, developing ovaries, becoming a queen. When she's ready, she chews through the cap and emerges, a virgin queen, ready to fight her sisters, ready to mate, ready to rule. Let me tell you about the bee's heart. Bees have hearts, simple hearts, just a tube along their back, pulsing, pushing hemolymph through their bodies. Hemolymph isn't blood like ours. It doesn't carry oxygen. Insects breathe through tubes called tracheae. Air goes directly to the tissues. The hemolymph carries nutrients, waste products, hormones. A bee's heart beats about 150 times per minute, faster when active, slower at rest. A tiny heart keeping a tiny body alive, so it can do its enormous work. Let me tell you about the future of beekeeping. Technology is changing how we keep bees. Sensors in hives monitor temperature, humidity, weight, sound. Beekeepers can check their hives from anywhere, see problems early, intervene quickly. Machine learning analyzes bee sounds, detecting disease, predicting swarms. Robot bees have been created, tiny drones that could theoretically pollinate if real bees disappear. But no robot can match a real bee. The complexity, the efficiency, the self-replication. Technology can help us understand bees, help us protect them, but it cannot replace them. Let me tell you about citizen science and bees. You can help scientists study bees. Projects like Bumblebee Watch let anyone report sightings, photograph bees, upload data. These observations help track populations, document range changes, identify declining species. You don't need to be a scientist, just curious, just willing to look and share what you see. Every observation matters. Data points adding up, painting a picture of how bees are doing, where they need help. Let me tell you about the sounds of a healthy hive. A happy hive has a steady hum, low and constant. The sound of contentment, bees going about their work. A queenless hive sounds different, higher pitched, anxious. A hive about to swarm makes a specific sound, piping, running, excitement. An angry hive rises in pitch. The buzz becomes aggressive, warning. Experienced beekeepers can diagnose problems by ear before opening the hive, listening to what the bees are saying. Let me tell you one final story. In ancient times, people believed bees were special, born from the carcasses of oxen, a process called begonia. They believed bees didn't reproduce like other creatures, that they were too pure for sex. They believed bees could foretell the future, could guide souls to the afterlife. They believed the bee was a symbol of the soul itself, working tirelessly. gathering sweetness from the world. We know better now. We understand bee biology, bee genetics, bee behavior, but maybe the ancients knew something too. The bee is special, not magical, but miraculous. A creature that defies expectations, that does impossible things with impossible efficiency. A creature that keeps us alive without asking for thanks. Maybe that's close enough to magic. And now, truly, finally, sleep. Let the hive grow quiet. Let the bees cluster for the night. Let the honey sit golden and still. Tomorrow the work continues, for the bees, for you. But tonight is for rest, for dreams, for recovery. You've earned it. Just like a forager bee at the end of her day, returning to the hive. Mission complete. Oing. Close your eyes. Feel the warmth of the cluster. Hear the gentle hum. You are safe. You are held. You are part of something larger. Good night. Sweet dreams. Sweeter than honey. One more journey. Before the final rest, let me tell you about a day in the life of a bee. She wakes in the dark hive, surrounded by sisters. The constant warmth of bodies, the smell of wax and honey. She grooms herself first, cleaning her antennae, brushing her wings. If she's young, she tends the brood, feeding larvae, checking cells, endless nursing. If she's middle-aged, she builds comb, secreting wax, chewing it soft, shaping perfect hexagons. Or she receives nectar from foragers, mouth to mouth, processing it, storing it. Or she guards the entrance, checking every arrival, ready to fight, ready to die. If she's old enough, she ventures outside. First, the orientation flights, hovering near the hive, memorizing landmarks, learning her way home. Then the real foraging begins, flying out, sometimes miles, finding flowers by color, by scent, by electrical charge. She drinks nectar, collects pollen, visits flower after flower, until her stomach is full. Her baskets are loaded, then the long flight home, dodging birds, navigating by sun, finding the hive, among thousands of similar hives perhaps. By smell, she delivers her cargo, dances if the source was good, eats some honey for energy, and goes out again. 10 trips a day, maybe, every day, until her wings fray, until she can't fly. Then she dies, somewhere in a field, or dragged from the hive after 6 weeks of service. That's a life, complete, no wasted moment, no purpose questioned. Let me tell you about what happens when the queen dies. The pheromones fade within hours. Workers sense the absence. The mood shifts. Anxiety spreads. If there are young larvae, workers can save the colony. They select several larvae under 3 days old. Feed them royal jelly. Begin building queen cells. Emergency queens. Raised in crisis. These queens are often smaller, less robust, but they can save the hive. If there are no suitable larvae, the colony is doomed. Workers might start laying eggs, but they can only lay drones, unfertilized eggs. Male bees that cannot save the colony. A lone worker hive is dying, slowly, desperately producing males that cannot become queens. This is why beekeepers check for queens. A queenless hive needs help. A new queen introduced, or frames of eggs from another hive. The queen is not really the ruler, she's the mother. And without a mother, the family cannot continue. Let me tell you about robbing. Bees steal from other hives. When flowers are scarce and nearby hives have honey, strong colonies attack weak ones. Robber bees test the defenses, looking for weak guards, looking for opportunity. And if they get in, they take honey, carry it home, tell others. The robbing escalates, hundreds of bees attacking. The weak hive overwhelmed, stripped of stores, left to die. It sounds cruel, but it's nature. Resources flowing to the strong, the weak eliminated. Beekeepers prevent robbing by keeping colonies strong, reducing entrances on weak hives, never leaving honey exposed. The bee world is not gentle. Underneath the sweetness, there is competition. There is survival. Let me tell you about beekeeping philosophy. Some beekeepers intervene constantly, inspecting weekly and treating for mites, managing aggressively. Others take a hands-off approach, natural beekeeping. Let the bees be bees. Intervene minimally. Both approaches have merit. Both have drawbacks. Heavy management can save colonies, but creates dependent bees, unable to survive without help. Light management respects bee nature, but can lead to high losses. Colonies dying that could be saved. Most beekeepers fall somewhere in between, adapting to their bees, their climate, their philosophy. There's no one right way to keep bees, only many ways that work for different people. In different places, let me tell you about the taste of honey. Not all honey tastes the same. Clover honey is light and mild, the most common in America. Buckwheat honey is dark and strong, almost molasses-like, rich in antioxidants. Orange blossom honey tastes of citrus, light and fragrant. Manuka honey from New Zealand is medicinal, made from tea tree flowers, prized for healing properties, expensive. Wildflower honey varies by region. Every location has different flowers, different flavor profiles. Single origin honeys reflect their terroir, like wine, the taste of a place. If you've only had commercial honey, you've missed the diversity. Find a local beekeeper. Try their honey. Taste the flowers of your region. Let me tell you about the warmth of the hive. On a cold night, like this one perhaps, the hive is warm, 95 degrees in the brood nest. Even when it's freezing outside, the bees create this warmth together, vibrating their muscles, metabolizing honey, sharing body heat. No bee alone could survive the cold, but together they create their own climate, their own world. You too create warmth under your blankets, your body generating heat, your nest keeping it in. Are like a bee in the cluster. You survive the night through warmth, through rest, through patience until morning. And now, truly finally, let the warmth surround you. Let the hum fade to silence. Let the bees sleep, and let yourself sleep too. The story is complete. The journey is done. Tomorrow the sun will rise. The bees will fly. The flowers will bloom. The work will continue. But tonight, rest. Good night. Sleep deep. Dream sweet. And wake ready for another day. In a world full of bees and wonder and honey. I